I'm just trying to make a disorientated potion.
A what?
Magic, even in potions, isn't to be taken lightly.
One mistake can turn it from a blissful taste into a sour mess.
I don't have any amethyst bits. Rock candy cupcake sprinkles are the next big thing, right?
Cozy, no! Oh my. Well, aren't you a strapping, handsome hunk?
And what is a ravishing mare like yourself doing in a dumpy swamp like this?
What has gotten into you two? There's got to be a way to undo this. Maybe a nullifying potion or something to reverse it? I don't need this. I don't need those two acting like parents towards me. On the bright side, at least Growbar isn't here to see the mess both of them in the lair has become.
You used my enchantment guide?
I tried creating a potion from one of the recipes written in there, and somehow that happened. I may or may not have used an incorrect ingredient or two, and now I'm stuck with that mess. When they have to act so lovey and dovey and weak and gross like that, it's annoying. Those two wouldn't shut up about dearie this and love that and daughter the other.
To reverse a potion's effect, there's no other secondary recipe to undo it. Every potion spell can be undone if you only modify the original recipe.
The muddy swamp water must have prevented me from getting all lovey-dovey because it was so dirty and tainted. Unlike the clean and pure recipe from the love potion. That's it!
Go make that nullifying spell!
Cozy spent the rest of the day once again collecting ingredients to recreate the love potion, saving the last spot for the new pitch at the end. She would have used the batch from last time, but she found the cauldron had somehow been emptied and cleaned. The one time she didn't want her roommates to help with chores. Hurried as she could be, Cozy looked over the book to recreate the mixture.
If I add morning mist this time, will it work for or against the nullifying effects?
She shook her head. It was late afternoon already, and she did not want to wait until morning to fix her nightmare. Wait, late afternoon. That meant... On cue, the familiar sickening sound of giggling began to echo throughout the lair. Sure enough, her roommates were back, still claw and hoof. Cozy tried her best to ignore the nauseating feelings as they passed by her, surprisingly not ignoring her this time.
Cozy, sweetie. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be home by afternoon to make lunch for you. I was a bit distracted.
Chrysalis cooed. Cozy rolled her eyes and looked back at them.
I can feed myself, thank you. What does it matter to you if I've eaten anything anyway? Aren't you two more focused on each other?
Tirek chuckled, holding Chrysalis's hoof closer to him.
Oh, we most definitely are. But that doesn't mean we would just push you aside.
You're right that we weren't all the same species.
Chrysalis continued, her wings buzzing gently behind her.
But that doesn't mean we can't love you as our daughter. You're our family, after all.
For the last time! Ugh!
Cozy stopped herself from attempting to correct them once again, knowing it would be futile, and decided to return back to the recipe.
Yeah, okay. Whatever.
Well, we just wanted to tell you we're so glad you've grown into such an independent little filly.
Mm-hmm.
The filly hummed, uninterested.
And we're proud of you.
Cozy's ears perked up.
Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Tirek hummed.
We're so proud of you, sweetie. Taking care of yourself.
And now you're even making potions of your own.
Chrysalis chirped, wrapping a foreleg around Tirek's bicep.
Isn't she the smartest little thing?
Indeed she is, my love.
Cozy stood unmoving on top of the table.
Now come, hon. Our dinner awaits us.
Chrysalis purred, pulling his arm gently towards the other room.
Right behind you, darling.
Cozy watched them disappear into the next room, eyeing the table as her mind still processed what just happened. It was gross, no doubt. Both of her only two allies acting like that in front of her. But that wasn't what caught her off guard.
No one's ever said they were proud of me.
She whispered as she found herself alone in the center room. The potion gas was supposed to affect them with each other, not with her. Unless... When she got out of the water, she herself wasn't affected, but they still were. When they saw her, they must have still been under the infatuation spell, except they didn't see her romantically like they did with each other, but rather parental. They fell in love with her in a parental way. That's why they wouldn't shut up about her being their daughter or trying to act like a family. They actually cared about her. Cozy eyed the still preheating cauldron and what she was about to undo. No more of their praising towards her. No more over-doting on her. No more lovey-dovey displays or serenades to each other or annoying birds cawing while you're trying to read and gross, mushy, ridiculously cheesy flirting lines that made her want to vomit. Yeah, no. She didn't want this. Grabbing a jar of the remaining dragon scales available, Cozy tossed them into the pot and stirred some more. Cozy made a point of covering herself with swamp water to nullify the effects of the potion gas as she hovered over the cauldron, lifting the rock candy sprinkles above her with a gasp and dunking them inside. The result was the same explosive magenta reaction. This time, she learned to shield her eyes. Its scent was sweet. Too sweet. Nauseating, in fact. Rock candy was too powerful of an ingredient, as it seemed. The overload of sugar must have been what caused her two victims to act too lovey-dovey with each other. Guess Chrysalis was right. Love, even in spell form, wasn't something to be handled delicately. Remembering this, Cozy added the next ingredient and threw a liter of swamp water into the mix. Almost instantly, the magenta mist was overcome with a light black fog. The nullifying potion was complete. Putting the fire off beneath it, she tried to grab the pot, only to realize it was still much too hot to be handled. She frowned at the fact she still needed to wait for it to cool, and decided to find her two allies first, so she'd know where to put the concoction to use. Flapping her small wings into the air, Cozy flew around the lair, looking in every room for the two ancient beings. Panic began to mildly take her when she found they weren't in the lair at all. Flying out into the swamp, her head turned side to side trying to locate them, until she spotted two large bodies in the distance, sitting on top of a small hill under a dead tree. The closer she got, she realized what the scene was. A picnic dinner. Everything was there. Chicken bits? Gross. A blanket. A wine bottle. She preferred not to ask where they got that. And was that French music playing beside them? She decided to land for a breather, not announcing her arrival, and walking up to them in silence.
The night stars are breathtaking this evening. aren't they?
Chrysalis sighed.
Undoubtedly.
Tirek agreed, taking her hoof into his hand.
It's not the only thing that takes my breath away tonight, however.
Chrysalis blushed with a hoof to her lips.
Oh, you flirt. There's no one else I'd rather share this night with.
Well, aside from one other creature.
Ah, yes, our darling daughter.
Cozy stopped her trotting uphill.
She's simply wonderful, isn't she?
The most vile and crafty little filly I've ever known.
Darling,
Yes, dear?
she's the only vile and crafty filly you've ever met.
Well, yes, love, you are correct. I suppose I just never decided to busy myself with children up until I met her. Cozy truly is inspiring.
Cozy dropped her gaze to the dried grass.
She may not see us as family yet, but I'm sure that within time, she'll come to see just how much we adore her.
Tirek smiled at her.
You are a gush of love, dear.
Chrysalis giggled as she lifted the wine bottle with her magic, popping open the cork.
Cozy might believe we're under a love spell, or however she sees it. But even if we weren't, if things were different, I don't see how I wouldn't have been able to resist such a strong and passionate male like yourself. Unless I was maybe really set on something else, like petty revenge or dominance or something of the sort.
Likewise, my dear.
Tirek said, holding up his wine glass as Chrysalis poured some into it.
Perhaps if I was too focused on an unachievable goal like trying to gather all the power of the world or some nonsense like that, I would have missed the gratifying opportunity of meeting and falling in love with such a beautiful mare like you.
Tirek reached to tenderly hold Chrysalis's cheek. The changeling in turn hummed softly against his touch.
Can you imagine what a cold and lonely world that would be?
She asked him.
I don't even want to think about it.
Bringing their glasses together, they shared a click against each other's drinks and took a sip. Cozy took a step back, part of her wanting to erase what she just heard, but for the wrong reasons. They didn't truly feel like that, did they? No, of course not. It's the love potion's effect. They would have never called their plans for takeover nonsense. Would they? Their sighs of content made her look back up. Chrysalis brought a napkin to her lips to clean away any remnants of her drink. Tirek, meanwhile, brought his arm beside her to scoot closer to her. Chrysalis welcomed him as she leaned against his muscular chest before they faced each other in a shared, starstruck trance. Seconds passed by in silence, only the gentle music playing around them to fill the air. The pony watching the couple almost felt bad to take away what they had, as fake as it actually was.
Darling,
Yes?
you said you would never busy yourself with children up to meeting our cozy glow, right?
Indeed, I did say that. Why do you ask, my dear?
Chrysalis blushed.
Well, do you think Cozy would be fond of the idea of a little brother or sister?
Cozy Glow took to the skies and rocketed towards the lair. Almost felt bad. Snatching a loose rag, Cozy lifted the cauldron by the handles and flew back out into the swamp. Within seconds, she was back within the sight of the dead tree on the hill. The two adults were now sitting face to face, intertwined in hoof and claw, and dazedly staring at each other.
Oh, love! That's a wonderful idea!
Tirek chirped.
I'm glad you think so.
Chrysalis sighed. Their stares held each other for a second longer before they closed their eyes and began to close in the distance between them. Cozy Glow hovered over them, a scowl of pure disgust on her face.
You make me sick.
With the swing of her forelegs, Cozy flipped the cauldron and poured every drop of its contents over the ancient villains. The first thing they did was spit out any mucky water that might have gotten into their mouths. It took them a few seconds to realize they were indeed soaked in some form of muddied water, and looked up at the light flapping of a pony's wings to see Cozy Glow above them, a relieved, smug smile on her face, with the handle of a cauldron still in hoof.
Cozy!
Chrysalis yelled, her teeth baring threateningly.
Did you just pour that disgusting water on me?
Tirek followed her gaze up to the Pegasus.
When I get my hands on you!
Cozy groaned at their ungratefulness.
You're welcome.
Why would we ever thank you for this?
Chrysalis shouted. The filly was indifferent to her remarks, scowling as she looked between them.
You guys can stop holding each other now.
Confused, Tirek and Chrysalis brought their attention to their claws and forelegs respectively, finding that they were indeed within each other's grasp. Their eyes met for a second when the realization hit them. Chrysalis jerked her forelegs away with an outraged cry.
Keep your disgusting claws off me, you brute!
Tirek pulled his hands back, keeping them up as if they had touched something toxic. His face contorted into one of repugnant.
There isn't enough soap in the world that will cleanse these hands again!
I don't recall having given you permission to touch me.
And you will never hear those words in your life!
Cozy, what is the meaning of this?
Chrysalis continued to shout back at the pony, unhappy she didn't have the answers as to how she ended up uphill on a blanket, with music playing, and with him. Recognizing the second, Chrysalis eyed the radio playing the melodious music, and smashed a hoof against it, silencing it forever.
Hey!
Cozy shouted.
That was mine!
Get another.
Ugh.
Cozy groaned for the 100th time in the past 2 days. It was a miracle her throat wasn't sore yet. Without any more words, she wheeled back towards the lair, at the very least content things were back to normal, and she could get a well-deserved good night's sleep. At her response, Tirek and Chrysalis looked at each other one last time, before Chrysalis briefly growled and took to the air, eager to get away from Tirek. Tirek rolled his eyes and got up from the blanket to walk back to the lair. Whatever happened during the last time they were conscious and now, he really didn't want to care. The hill was left in dead silence for a few seconds, until a beam of green magic shot straight at it, destroying any remains of a picnic setting. Once all three villains entered the lair, Cozy Glow went straight to her room, choosing to leave the cleaning to next morning Cozy.
I'm going to bed.
She called out to the others.
And for the love of Celestia, do not start any singing.
That stated, she slammed her room door on them. Chrysalis raised an eyebrow at Tirek at the outburst, who only lazily shrugged. Wordlessly, they decided they couldn't care less and went their opposite ways to their rooms. Cozy hovered weakly to her bed and let herself slump against her pillow, moaning into it before raising her head to breathe.
Well, Cozy, what did you learn today? Professor Pinky was right. Too many sprinkles can give you a pain in the... everything.
She sighed, reaching down to grab her blanket and curl herself inside it, wanting to finally rest. As she did, the words from her two allies ran back in her head. She aimlessly stared into the dark corner of her room, pondering about the moment before she fixed her mess.
If you weren't out to get revenge or gain so much power that no one can stop you, you would actually give it a try. Huh.
Her young imagination tried to visualize a world, alternative or otherwise, where said goals were achieved. Would they stay true to their words and give each other a go? In a future where she wasn't so obsessed with revenge, or where he wasn't set on draining every bit of magic from the world to please his overgrown ego. And she would be there.
Yeah, like that's ever gonna happen.
Cozy scoffed, huddling her cheek against her pillow. Tirek stretched his hefty arms above his head, pulling a crack as he lowered them with a deep, heavy sigh. Grabbing one of his pillows, he began to fluff them before sleep, looking down as he squeezed it to its most comfortable, then looking to his hands. Without thinking, he let the pillow fall as one hand breezed over the other. Making one into a fist, he cupped the other from below, insinuating as if he was holding a hoof. It felt weird to hold another palm that didn't also have fingers. Even weirder was that hers had holes instead. Realizing what he was thinking, Tirek shook his head and went over to the window of his room, grabbing both doors from either side and shutting it closed. The brief gust of wind they created was enough to breeze off a piece of paper from a nearby table. The towering centaur raised a curious eyebrow at it, before bending all the way down to pick it up and read it. Barely a few lines in, he hastily backed away from the paper, appalled when he recognized his own handwriting. It was a mushed collage of cheesy lines and half-baked attempts at flirts. Half he recognized as his own, and the other, he wasn't quite sure. With a grunt, he crumpled the note within his hand and was about to throw it across the room and vaporize it with his magic, when he paused and took a seat on his bed, slowly opening the note back up. A few lines more, and he soon realized who was the other partaking in the written exchange of sweet nothings. He especially took a liking to those making emphasis on his hefty build and significant strength. Whether or not they were exaggerated, he didn't take into account. Unconsciously, a small smile formed on his lips, as did a faint blush on his face. After a few moments of hesitation, Tirek looked around his room, making sure he was alone as he neatly folded the paper and tucked it under his pillow. He then stood back up, coughing into his fist like nothing happened, and went into the bathroom of his room, opting to freshen up before finally going to bed. Chrysalis slammed her door closed with her back leg, disappointed at her lack of a decent dinner before sleep. Usually she would have a small meal from a nightly hunt, or at the very least, indulge herself with one of the pastry sweets the filly would cook up. Their sugary mixture had an almost similar taste of love, not a permanent substitute, but a decent temporary one. From the looks of it, the filly did in fact decide to go beyond her baking skills, because the kitchen was a mess. But she could manage. She always did. Setting on going for a hunt the next day, Chrysalis walked toward her web-covered bed, passing by a vase with a strange bouquet of dried-up weeds and lopsided flowers. Realizing their presence, she turned towards it and held up the note that came on the side. Since when did she keep flowers? Holding up the note, she read,
For my love bug. T.
Her eye twitched for a second after reading. The bouquet, vase and all, was then thrown out her window, smashing into the rock surface below. Crickets continued to chirp in the dead of night, as did a few crows flying by. A moment of tranquility later, the bouquet was engulfed in green magic, and they were levitated back inside the window that they were just thrown out of. A decoration or two never hurt anyone. Within minutes, all lights went off, and tranquility returned to the swamp. Everything had returned to how it once was. One could at least hope.
Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side, my love. But you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. You say you wanna cry, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side.